Imagine if you could reprogram your mind to be able to do the tasks that you don't like doing, but that you know are the key to make you win. For everybody, we know there are things that you know that if you did this every day, as daunting as it is, as hard as it seems, but you know that if you did that every day, you'd get closer to your goal. But you don't do it because you don't like it, like you never feel like doing it, or you push it away, right? Because let's face it, in order to achieve any goal, there are certain tasks that you may have to regularly do to get close to your outcomes. And yes, some of them are very pleasant. Some people love certain things that they do in order to get successful. But even in between that, so even if it's an artist who likes singing, there's a lot of things in between that, like the paperwork, the sending emails to promoters, the press releases, and all of this other stuff that they really didn't like when they liked music and singing in their mom's basement. They didn't like music for that. They just wanted to do music. But maybe it's an independent artist. They can't afford to hire a lot of staff yet to be able to do the right thing, right? They're still growing. So they have to do that stuff. They have to do the accounting. They have to work out so that they can have a physique where they can perform, right? And again, I'm not saying this is not advice that I'm just giving to artists. I'm giving them as an example, right? So of the things that you want to do, or the things you want to achieve, rather, there are tasks that are pleasant. There are tasks that are not very pleasant, but those tasks are important. And if you skip those tasks, that's why you keep on hitting a ceiling with what you're doing. Because you're only doing what you like about the goal. You're not doing what you don't like. The idea, right, is to commit these tasks to habit once they become a habit. Because maybe sometimes the reason a certain task is hard is because it's new, it's harder to do. When you were a child and you couldn't walk, that was harder to do. You were staggering. But you had the motivation to say, I want to walk like these other adults, I guess. So it's harder for you to talk, to enunciate words. But you kept doing it. That repetition, kept doing it. What's that? The neuroplasticity that occurred there. There's something called neuroplasticity, whereby if you keep on pushing a boundary with your neurons and trying something and keeping on trying something, eventually it becomes easier for you to do. And we call that neuroplasticity, the ability of your brain to morph and shape shift in order to make a certain task that you repeat more efficient. Have you ever noticed that if there's a certain number you always dial on your phone, sooner or later you don't need to look at it, you just do it, right? That's the same mechanism. So if your brain sees that you're making a daily effort, even if it's small commitments to do a certain thing, good or bad, it rewires itself to make that task easier to do. Even with the bad habits, there's nobody who starts smoking by smoking the whole case. There's nobody who becomes an alcoholic on their first day of drinking. It's something that builds its own appetite through your neurons to become a norm, such that you don't feel all right without doing it. But I'm saying, what if you could do that with the things that are hard to do, that you don't like to do, but you know that these things are crucial to your business, or you know that these things are crucial to your relationship. These things, if you started doing them more, your relationship could be better. You're not used to them. You never grew up doing them. So they are not in your neurology. That's why they're so hard to do. But if you made them a norm, which is to make something a norm, it's to normalize. If you made them normal, then you do them without too much effort. Then it would be easier to reach your goal. But how do you get to that stage? Because your brain is not just going to rewire itself the first day that you try it. It's still going to be hard. So what is it going to take for you to do those things to a point where your brain is like, okay, your mind is like, okay, this is worth the investment. This person has really pushed this. Let's rewire to make this easier. Because your brain is not just going to take anything that you do once off and say that, okay, this is now a habit. That's why if you scratch an airtime juice card, I don't know, in some countries they still airtime juice cards where you can put a pin code that you get from a paper or a receipt so that you can have some credit in your phone, right? So that you can make a phone call. You don't remember most of those numbers because you're using them once off, and your brain doesn't make any effort to put them in a long-term memory perspective. It knows that. Yet you remember your ID, your social security number, or any other important number, your bank account number, your card numbers. You might remember them off the head. One, because you use them frequently. Two, because there's an intention that you do them with, an emotional intention where you even got them, more importantly than a little receipt with an airtime that you just trash in the bin, right? So it means that if you can deliberately list the things that you know, if you say your goal, list at least even 5 things. There could be more, but let's just say 5, even 3 things that you could do on a weekly basis or on a daily basis, even at a small level. I'm not asking you to go and max out on that thing. Like I said, let's say somebody who started smoking, how come it becomes a habit? Like someone who starts drinking, they don't have to start with the big chunks of that thing. They just have to start by doing the small bits. The people that do big crime, they started off just stealing candy from a shop, probably. Most of them, from what I've seen in documentaries. They might have started with something very small or minor offenses, and then they got, because everything, I've got a friend who always says everything has got its own appetite. Yeah, Mr. Patrick, he says that. I got a friend called Patrick. He says everything's got its own appetite. So once you keep on doing it, it's getting hungry. It wants more. It wants a bigger. So why can't you do that with the things that you need to do in your finances? Why can't you do that with the things that you need to do in your relationship? Why can't you do that with the things that you need to do to have the body you want and to have the life you want? And that's what discipline is. And discipline, I said in another video, when I grew up, discipline was usually meant to be some sort of, to mean punishment, where I come from in our culture. I'll discipline you. It means that I'm going to spank you. It means that I'm going to scold you. It means that I'm going to reprimand you. Yet discipline is not a punishment. Discipline is a reward.